Welcome everybody to Just Among Friends. I'm Lori Hines and it is May 9th, 2021. And I am here with my co-host Ann Stacy and Mike Isley with today's episode. We have a fun hour ahead of us, and so we're excited to get started. Before we do, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. So that let me do a quick screen share. All right, we have our sponsors, Ann Stacy with Texans for a Safe Israel, Mike Isley, Texans for Israel, and myself, A Taste of Israel. And so we are excited to bring you this next episode. I also want to just give a quick shout out to our upcoming speakers. Next Sunday, I will be broadcasting a recorded conversation interview with Donna Jolet of Jerusalem Tours. She is I'm going to send that out as a recording, like I said, but you're going to love it. She's very passionate about what she's doing, which is aligned with what we're doing. Then we're going to also hear from David Badin. He's going to be joining us live from Israel. He is the director of the Badin Center Near East Policy Research. You don't want to miss that live interview. It will bring information to the forefront that you probably, I'm going to say, don't know about, that you need to know about. And then the end of the month, we're going to have the distinguished Mr. Yoram Ettinger. He's the retired ambassador, expert on U.S.-Israel relations in the Middle East. He's also the former Israel Consul General in Houston, Texas, and he's the former head of Israel's relations with the U.S. Congress. We're very excited about Mr. Ettinger coming on. He'll also be joining us live from Jerusalem. And then we are here today. Our guest speaker today, as you all know, is Mr. Gidon Ariel. He's joining us live from the hills of Jerusalem. He's the co-founder and the CEO of Root Source, and we're excited to have Gidon. I'm going to go ahead and show you this link. So in case I forget, if you would like to donate, and we invite you to do that, please take a screenshot of this of the slide. So this link, you can go to his website to make a donation to the work he's doing. And I feel certain that if you're not aware of what he's doing, I'm sorry, 1 second. Okay. We had someone joining. I want to let this person in. Okay. If you don't know what Gidon is doing with Root Source, you will after this, and you will want to jump on board and be a part of that. So welcome, Gidon. We're excited to have you. And for those of you just joining us, like I said, I'm on the road today traveling to my mom's, so I had to pull over because of traffic, but we're here and we are excited. Our mission, before we start, I just want to remind people who may be just now tuning in or who may be watching this for the first time off our YouTube channel, the recorded version of it. Our mission here at Just Among Friends is to help people understand the relationship with the Jewish people and how important that is, that we cultivate that with no hidden agenda. We just want to enlarge our circle of friends and focus on our shared Judeo-Christian values and grow this group of friends. We consider it a very unique journey to be on, and we're very honored to be on this path with you, Gidon, and all of the Jewish people who are alongside with us. All right, I don't think I have any other announcements. Happy Mother's Day to anyone listening to this. So we just are so honored to honor you mothers today. Welcome, Gidon. How are you this evening, my friend?
Hello, Lori. It is truly a pleasure to be here among friends. I'm among my friends here, amongst the people who are going to be I'm going to be talking with, and I also saw that I'm among friends with the other guests that you have lined up for the next coming month. They're all my friends. It's a small country.
Yeah. That's great. That's exciting. That's what we hope to do, is to connect more people to this incredible circle of friends. So nice to hear that.
Great.
So right now you're coming to us live from Israel. So it's like 10 o'clock there in the evening. So you're joining us in the evening.
That's right.
Good. Okay. Well, we have a handful of questions, and I also want to open up the mic, so to speak, for anybody who's here with us who has a question for you. So if y'all are ready, I'll get started with the first question. excuse me,
Excellent.
tonight in Israel began Yom Yerushalayim Day, or Yom Yerushalayim, which is Jerusalem Day.
Yes.
So can you take just a few minutes and start us off with that? What does that mean, and what does it mean to you? Give us some information on this special day.
Okay, I'm gonna try to give really say what it means and then say what it means to me, because it really means a lot to me.
Okay.
Jerusalem Day is the official holiday commemorating the Six-Day War. Of course, the Six-Day War was the war in 1967, a mere 19 years after Israel was founded in 1948. Uh, it was actually on Independence Day. Independence Day is Hey ER, the fifth day of the month of ER. Everybody's heard that it's May 14th, but we have a different calendar that is around the same time, and that's the official calendar of Israel. So Hey ER, the fifth day of ER in 1967, all of Israel was watching an Independence Day parade, and on that day, Egypt decided to close the Straits of Tiran, which was the very important waterway through which Israel could receive could interact with the East. You had the Mediterranean ports and the Eilat port in the south, which if you had any material coming by boat from eastern countries like Japan or something like that, they came in through the Eilat port. And if they came from the west, then they would come from the Tel Aviv port, the Haifa port, the whole Mediterranean side. So when Egypt closed those straits, the Straits of Tiran, in order for any boats to be able to come in through the Gulf, the port of Eilat, the Gulf of Aqaba, then that was an act of war, and it wasn't simply an act of war, but all over the Arabic radio station, the Egypt and other uh, Arab countries were saying, we are going to kill Israel. We are going to simply throw all the Jews into the sea, into the Mediterranean Sea. So just saying I'm going to kill you, unfortunately, is not an act of war. If that would have been an act of war, then we would now have a serious casus belli, a reason to defend ourselves against Iran, who today is declaring day after day that we're going to there's going to be no, they're going to erase Israel from the map. But let's not talk about the future. Let's talk about the past. And there was Egypt saying we are going to destroy Israel. And this was something that anybody who lived in Israel at the time remembered from a mere 19 years earlier, when that is exactly what all of the surrounding Arab states were trying to do: destroy Israel. And then a few days after, Egypt made a pact with Jordan and with Syria that all three of those countries would together join their armies in an attempt to destroy Israel. So that's what we were looking at, moving up to the 60 War. But in the 60 War itself, on June 6th, I believe it was, Kaf Chet ER, the 28th day of the month of ER, which is a mere 23 days later, a mere 3 weeks later, and a bit, Israel decided that they would make a daring preemptive strike against Egypt's air force, and they destroyed all of the planes of Egypt on the ground. And at the same time, they also destroyed the air forces of Jordan and of Syria, and I think also from Iraq is also, well, for good measure. So basically, what everybody and then they continued on for 6 days until they finally decided that this was enough, and they said, okay, the war is over. But for the first 6 hours of that war, they destroyed all of these air forces, giving them air superiority all over the Middle East. For the next 6 days, Israel was the only air force in the skies of the Middle East, and amazingly, those armies continued trying to fight us, even though we had air superiority. With air superiority, you can't lose a battle. And so we completed the battles of the 6 Day War. And during that 6 Day War, we conquered Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the Golan Heights, the Gaza Strip, and Sinai. That's six places in 6 days. And in that war, we tripled our the area of Israel's territory, and simply became a much more robust country. And since then, we have managed to make peace with Egypt, and in trading gave back the Sinai Desert to them. But most importantly, we still have the Golan Heights in Judea and Samaria, with various controversies going on about them. But mostly importantly, we have Jerusalem, which has been and will always be Israel's capital. And that is the importance of Jerusalem Day, which was created to give thanks to God on a special, miraculous holiday, that we have liberated Jerusalem, never to go back there, to leave it again. And you're familiar with the famous song "Jerusalem of Gold." "Jerusalem of Gold" was a song written by Naomi Shemer, arguably the poet laureate of Israel, and she wrote this song 3 weeks before the 6 Day War, and in it she expressed Israel's heart for Jerusalem when we still couldn't go down to up to Jerusalem through Jericho. We couldn't go to the wall, the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, in the heart of the old city of Jerusalem. All of this was beyond our abilities, beyond the border. But in a flash, we were able to reconquer these places, and all of Israel was so amazed that we had come back to our heart, to our city, our capital city of Jerusalem, never to leave it again. And that is the significance of Jerusalem Day. That is significance of Jerusalem Day in general. I will say that the significance of Jerusalem Day specifically for me, as a religious Orthodox Jew, it is really, as my wife pointed out today, the holiday of people who believe that both the state of Israel and the 6 Day War were simply gifts from God, and that is really the holiday, if you will, of religious Zionism. It shouldn't be that way. It should be for all Jews and for all people. But first and foremost, religious Zionists are grateful to God that who put a stamp of approval, as it were, in case we weren't sure that the state of Israel was enough of a divine gift. Here came the 6 Day War to give us back the city of Jerusalem to be our capital, and Judea and Samaria, which is the heartland of Israel, where Hebron is, near where I live. I live in a suburb of the city of Hebron, where Nablus is, where Jericho is. All of the holy cities mentioned in the Bible, the heartland of the Bible, is where we came back to, and where we're continuing to be to this very day.
Amazing. there's so many stories about the miracle of the 6-Day War. We could probably do a whole entire hour just on those miracles. But
And
I
you
love,
should.
and we should, yes. Thank you. We probably will at some point. So it's very special to have you and you giving us your personal perspective on the special holiness of this day, and for the reasons you gave. So we just stand shoulder to shoulder with you and support that 100%, and love the fact that we're seeing you live from the Hebron Hills. It's amazing.
I'm gonna get even more personal if I can, Lori.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance yet. Maybe you'll ask me a little bit more about my personal story. I was a member of the B'nai Akiva youth movement,
Yes.
which was the international religious Zionist, Orthodox Jewish Zionist movement. And even before I moved to Israel, we received our tribe name, as it were. It was because I came of age, my age group, as it were, my class came of age in 1977, which was 10 years after the liberation of Jerusalem. Right. So the international movement decided to give our group the name Ariel. Ariel, of course, for Jerusalem. Ariel is another name of Jerusalem.
Really?
And so, yes. So that was a year before I moved to Israel. And wow. After 20 years, when after moving to Israel approximately, I got married to my wife, Deborah. Together we decided that we would change our married name. My name when I was growing up was Reich. It's a nice name, and of course it's the name of my father, so it holds something dear in my heart. But I wanted to both give thanks to the B'nai Akiva movement that I loved so much, and to Jerusalem, which I loved so much. And so we took upon ourselves that name, Ariel. And so that's why my name is Gidon Ariel. So that is about as personal as you can get, what Jerusalem Day means to me.
Wow. That is so powerful when you change your name, and for those reasons. Yeah, exactly. I agree. I don't think you can get any more personal than that. That's incredible. So let's talk about your dad for a second. I do want to hear the story about your father. I've never heard this, but I think Ann might have heard bits and pieces of this story. So I want our audience to hear this. A fascinating story about your father being a Holocaust survivor, and how you got to the B'nai Akiva. And then we know how you got to where you're at today. But can you tell us the background on your father?
Oh, my father's name was Peter Reich. In Hebrew, his Hebrew name was Pinchas. He was born in 1930 in Hungary, in Budapest. And by the time he was 14, that was already 1944, which was when the Second World War and especially the Holocaust came to Hungary. Of course, the Nazis conquered Hungary later than almost any other country in Europe. And so up until then, the Jews in Hungary were living, I guess you could say, a fool's paradise. While they were just still walking around. The war hadn't come to them yet. But when it came to them with a vengeance. And more, I really have to get a more exact numbers, but let's say pretty much a higher percentage of Jews in Hungary were killed than any other place. 90% of Hungarian Jews were decimated, killed, murdered in that last year of the Holocaust. And they managed to stick all of the Holocaust into 1 year. The Holocaust itself, of course, was from 1941 all the way, 1942 all the way up to 1945, I think. So I'm not too good at the numbers. But while 6 million Jews were killed all over Europe and a little bit outside of Europe, in Hungary, I don't have the number offhand. Maybe somebody can look it up on Wikipedia. 90% of Hungarian Jews were killed. My father was luckily one of the 10% who survived.
Mm,
And what happened is that when the Nazis came to Hungary, my father's family, which was his parents and his sister, he just had him and his sister were the children of my grandparents on my father's side. They rounded up the adult males and brought them to work camps. And so my
mm,
grandfather immediately went to forced labor. And
mm,
my father, who was at the time only 14, he didn't have a beard yet or a mustache, so he was still a kid, and he was able to stay back with the women and the children. That's the way it
mm,
was. So of course his younger sister, my aunt, was both a woman and a child, and I'm not sure exactly what happened until they finally were able to move in to a safe house of Deborah. What was the name of the? Okay, I'm going to say it's Raoul Wallenberg. Actually, there were a few safe houses over there, and in fact, it wasn't Raoul Wallenberg, but he's the more famous one. I'm sure that some of the listeners heard of Raoul Wallenberg. He was a Swedish diplomat, and he was the I don't think that he was the Swedish ambassador to Hungary. He was a second or even third tier um, a diplomat from Hungary to Sweden to Hungary.
mm,
But he saw what was going on. He said, "I don't care. I have the rubber stamp of the Swedish embassy. I am going to do something." So what he did was he somehow managed to rent a whole bunch of buildings, and in the name of the Swedish embassy, turn them into annexes of the
mm,
Swedish embassy,
mm,
and therefore any person who would come into an embassy officially was, uh, as it were, in the country of that embassy. So if a Jew would make it into a Swedish neutral embassy, the Nazis wouldn't be able to come in there and do anything. So what he did was he said, all of these houses that I just rented are annexes of the Swedish embassy, and therefore any Jew who would be able to come in would be under Swedish diplomatic immunity, and the Nazis
mm,
would not be able to have them. So hundreds, or it must have been hundreds, maybe even thousands, but even hundreds is a lot, of Jews were saved that way because they were in Raoul Wallenberg's safe houses, and that is how my father and his mother and sister managed to survive the war. They don't think that they managed to get a whole room in a beautiful embassy. Recently, we had the Americans open up a new embassy in Jerusalem. It's a beautiful building. No, 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 no. These were the cheapest industrial buildings that Raoul Wallenberg could find, and they had about 2 or 3 families in every room.
mm.
So because people, they realized that if they don't go into that building, then they had a death warrant against their lives.
Right.
So that is the way it was. I don't remember if my father was on the top floor or the bottom floor. Wherever he was, it was not comfortable. But um, when the Nazis bombed Budapest, they were going to bomb these buildings also, of course. And
Mhm.
so that's when the higher floors were the worst. The best place to be were on the higher floors because they had best air over there, and he didn't have people walking through there. I don't remember if he had to run down in order to be saved from the bombings, or if he lived on the bottom all the time and he was happy that he was there. Bottom line is, anybody who survived the Holocaust survived it miraculously.
Wow.
Your question, and really it's an amazing connection. Fast forward from about 1945 or 1944 to 1978. So that's a mere 34 years, right? Something like that. That's not a lot of time. I've been in Israel for over 40 years. So 34 years is not a lot of time at all. Believe me.
Right.
I decided, together with my family, that I wanted to go to Israel for high school. And the high school that I was going to go to was a place called Nativ Meir. It was Yeshiva High School in Jerusalem. Yeshiva is a school of advanced Jewish study, and so instead of just studying math and science and English or Hebrew in Israel, they also studied Torah for half a day, and even a little bit more than half a day. We would start at about 7:00, 7:30 in the morning, or something like that. We would start with our prayers. Then we go to breakfast. Then from 9:00, we would start studying the Talmud and the Bible. About 1:00. That was the whole morning. We would study the Torah. Then in the afternoon, we would have 5 or 6 classes of our secular subjects until about 7:00 at night. And then from 7 to 8 at night, we would have another hour of studying the Torah. And then, of course, our homework at night. So that is the Yeshiva High School experience.
Wow.
The head of that yeshiva, his name was Rabbi Ariel Bina. He also Hebraicized his name. His name was Rabbi Binakovsky. So he shortened it to Bina, and Bina means wisdom in Hebrew. Anyway, when my father brought me to Brooklyn, we were living in Queens at the time, so we made a trek all the way to Brooklyn to interview with Rabbi Bina, because he was the head of that yeshiva that I was trying to be accepted to. Well, what I didn't tell you is that after the Holocaust, my father, who was a member of the Bnei Akiva youth movement in Hungary, moved to Israel with a bunch of his Bnei Akiva friends. And he came to the Kfar HaRoeh Yeshiva High School, where Rabbi Bina was a teacher. He was one of the main teachers. So when Rabbi Bina moved to Jerusalem to establish this new high school called Nativ Meir. It was named after Rabbi Meir Bar Ilan, who was, I think, one of the signatories of the State of Israel's Declaration of Independence. I might be wrong. Doesn't matter. He certainly was one of the leaders of the religious Zionist movement, which was where Kfar HaRoeh Yeshiva was. Of course, it was the initial school, the initial institute of religious Zionism. So when my father brought me to Brooklyn to interview, my father was a savvy guy. He said, "Oh, Rabbi Bina, do you remember me? I'm Pinchas Reich. I was in Kfar HaRoeh with you." And of course, he said this in Hebrew. So they spent the entire interview schmoozing with each other. I barely knew a word of Hebrew there, so I don't remember how I passed that interview. Luckily, I did, probably because thanks to my father. So that is the. We don't have a lot of time, and I know that you got a lot of questions. That's just a little bit of the answer to your questions, I think.
Such an interesting path to where you're at, all those connections. Very, very, I mean, how obvious is it, right? That God was leading you to where you're at today. So clear, so clear. Okay, thanks for sharing all of that, because that's important for us to know. Let's go on. Now, I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to open up. I do have a bunch of questions that we may not get to all of mine, because I want to give people that are here the opportunity to ask questions. But before I go there, I have one more for you. My question is about what I heard you call one time the elephant in the room. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that this is one of those questions that people want to ask so bad, but they're never sure how to go about it for fear of offense or a number of reasons. But I know you well enough to be able to be comfortable asking you this. And I heard you discuss this elephant in the room in Austin. You were speaking in Austin one time a few years ago, and it came up. And so let's go ahead and get it out of the way so we can give our audience peace of mind that everything's okay.
Everything's okay.
Yeah, everything's okay. The question is this. You're Orthodox Jew, and many of our listeners here and people that will be watching this, the recorded version, are also Orthodox Jews. And then we have Christians. I'm a Christian, and we're a mixed bunch of friends. And that's fine. But people want to know, as Christians want to know, I should say, let me be very specific. A lot of Christians ask me, well, what about the Jesus question? What about the Jesus question? And I heard you say one time, at that time in Austin, you said, and this wasn't quoting you because I'm paraphrasing, but you said, we are full aware of the Jesus question. And then you said, it's the elephant in the room, but can't we just be friends? I mean, do you really have to go there? So, and make that the point of this conversation? So tell me what your thoughts, have you changed on that perspective as far as being comfortable answering that kind of question? Or what are your thoughts when you get this kind of stuff?
Well, again, we started almost in the middle of a conversation because we didn't talk about how I got here and what am I doing,
Yeah.
an Orthodox Jew from Hebron,
Yes.
talking to a bunch of Christians in Texas
Yeah.
and all over
Yeah.
the world. Okay, I'll try to really make that short because really, otherwise there's no point in the question itself. Like I said, I'm an Orthodox Jew born in New York. I wasn't observant my entire life. You really can't. I can't. My father passed away, I think, about 8 years ago, maybe more. Ever since I got married about 24. Now I know it's 24 years ago because my wife and I just had our 24th wedding anniversary. So
congratulations.
So for a few days before and after my wedding anniversary, I know for sure how many years I've been married. The rest of the year, I'm not 100% sure. I give a good guess. I'm not too good at numbers, but 24 years ago, when I got married, and I've been in Israel for about 48 years, for over 40 years. And but when I grew up, I was growing up in New York. Like I said, my father was observant. He was in a yeshiva when he was in his late teens. But you really can't dare to approach any Holocaust survivor what his relationship is with God. So my father became less religious during his later years, but he came back to religion towards the end of his life. And I grew up in a not religious home, but I became religious when I joined the Bnei Akiva youth movement, and not only religious, but a true lover of Israel. The values of Bnei Akiva were the love of the God of Israel, the love of the people of Israel, the love of the Torah of Israel, the love of the land of Israel, and the love of the state of Israel. Those are the values that I embraced so much when I was a mere 10 years old, and when I joined the youth movement, and they keep me in good stead to this very day. But my and that is really why I came to Israel. And one day when I was walking through I'm really making this short. People have heard this story often, but I know that you've got a lot of other very interesting questions, and we don't have a lot more time left. One day when I was walking through Jerusalem, I saw a sign on a door. I crossed the street in order to read the sign because that is a hobby of mine. You know that you can get a degree in Jewish history just by reading the street signs in Jerusalem.
I agree.
This was not a street sign. It was a sign of a small office at the time. It said ICEJ, which stands for International Christian Embassy Jerusalem. And this was surprising to me that Christians would want to have an embassy in Jerusalem, Jerusalem signifying the state of Israel and the people of Israel, and embassy, of course, signifying friendship. So why would Christians want to be friends with Jews? I thought that Christians were the enemies of Jews. That's what we grew up thinking. But I did walk inside, this embassy. It was just a small apartment at the time. Today they have a whole mansion in Jerusalem. Baruch Hashem, thank God. And
Yes.
there was the receptionist saying, "Can I help you?" You say, "No, no, no, I'm just looking." And I took a few brochures. I took them home to look at them, and I said, "Yes, these are Christians who love Israel. These are Christians who really want to be friends with Jews." And I remembered what I learned in kindergarten, that if somebody wants to be your friend and extends the hands of friendship to you, then you embrace that hand, you shake that hand, and you try to be friends back with them. And that is just
Mm.
something that God put into my heart way back then. That was about that was in the 80s. That was
Wow.
about it was probably, I don't know exactly when it was, but it was way before I got married that I started thinking about creating a relationship with Christians. And since I got married, that was something that God put more and more into my heart to do. I was working in high tech. I was working in a computer company in those days. I quit my job in high tech and computers, and I started to do more, or to think more and more. What could I do to engage, to strengthen my relationship with Christian friends? What I would do is that at any time a Christian friend would bring a group to Israel and ask me to speak, then that's what I would do, like I'm doing now.
Mm.
So about 8 years ago, I met my friend Bob Odell from Austin, Texas, who introduced us also, Lori, ultimately
Yes.
also Ann, and also Mike, and all of my Texas Christian friends who I just want to talk with. And I said, here's
Yeah.
my opportunity. I'll talk with them on the internet, and that will be something that I'll be able to get to spend more and more time doing. And that's what I've been doing. And that is Root Source. Let me just share. I hope
Mm.
that I have an ability to share my screen here. I do. So let me quickly
Oh,
share.
do you? Okay, great.
Yeah, let
Yes.
me share my screen and show
Please
you
do.
Root Source is a labor of love. It's a gift from Jews to Christians around the world, with Jews and Christians studying the common roots of their faith together. Here are some of our original teachers. We have today about 1,000 recorded lessons. Like I said, about a dozen teachers teaching on the average of 50 lessons each. And over 50,000 Christians around the world have signed up for our free newsletter. What are some of the topics? Here's Rabbi Yehuda Glick. If you haven't had him on yet, you're going to have him on soon, I'm sure. He teaches about
Yes.
the temple. Rabbi Ken Spiro teaches Jewish history. The
Yes.
weekly portion with Sandra Barras, I bet you've had her on already. Women in the Bible, introductory Hebrew, the land of Israel, all of these topics that my teachers love to teach, and there are Christians who love to hear. And
Yes.
you are special Christians because you love to hear from Jews about what the Jews like to teach. You're a very special group, you are. So, but really the question that you had was, what about Jesus? What is going on here that I am an Orthodox Jew and all of my teachers
Yes.
are Orthodox Jews for whom Jesus has no spiritual value? It pains me to say that because I
It's
know that
okay.
he has 100% spiritual value for my Christian friends. How is it possible that you love Jesus with all your soul and with all of your heart and with all of your might? And for me, it's not. I love the Torah. I love the land of Israel. I love the people of Israel. And that, of course, is the answer, that we can somehow, God has put into our heart to put our differences aside and to just follow our hearts, to be friends. I almost wanted to say to be lovers. We're not lovers. I've got one lover. She's my wife. Keep your distance, please, Lori. But we love each other.
Yes.
Love is the word that the Christians who I love have introduced me to say. Don't be embarrassed to say that word. That is the main commandment of my pro-Israel
Yes.
Christian friends, and not only my pro-Israel
Yes.
Christian friends. That is the number one commandment, or maybe the number two commandment. it's a tie, I think, between the number 1 and
Yeah.
number 2 commandment. I don't remember which verse in which chapter in which book in the New Testament it's mentioned that Jesus said to his followers, there are 2 main commandments. Shema Yisrael
Yes.
Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Yes.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you should love the Lord with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and all of your might. And there's another commandment. Ve'avta l'reacha kamocha. You should love your neighbor as yourself. These are the 2 greatest commandments. And if those are the 2 greatest commandments for Christians who hear those beautiful verses and said, this is what Jesus commanded us to do, then guess what? They come from the Old Testament, and those are the number 1 commandments of the Old Testament too, and what we
Yes.
call the Torah. They are
Right.
the Jewish Bible commanding Jewish people what to do. Now,
Yes.
out of those 2 commandments, loving the Lord and loving your neighbor, come all the rest of the 613 commandments that we are commanded, because all commandments of the Torah can be divided into one of 2 categories: commandments between man and God, and commandments between man and man. Examples of commandments between man and God: you should make sure that you don't light fires on the Sabbath day. You should fast on Yom Kippur, on the holiday of repentance. You should wear tefillin, phylacteries, which is also mentioned in the in that chapter of
Right.
love
Right.
for it. But those are the things that just between God and man.
Mhm.
But there are also commandments between man and fellow man.
Mhm.
If you see somebody who is trying to load his donkey, you are commanded to help him. If you see somebody who is poor, you are commanded to lend him money. If you see these are, and so we have hundreds of
Right.
commandments, hundreds of commandments like those, and all of the
There you-
commandments fall into one of those categories. So you see
Okay.
that we have a lot in common with Christians,
Yes. Yes.
even though it's true, I can't forget for a minute that Christians love Jesus,
Yeah.
but for somehow God is putting into your heart, I'm an adult. I don't have to talk about something with people who are uncomfortable perhaps talking about that. So there's so much more that we have in common. And so
Yes.
we are going to spend our time together on the things that we have in common. And that is what Root Source is all about.
It's amazing.
Jews who want to share with Christians that which the Christians want to get from them. The Jews have been the guardians of the gachelet, the burning coal of Torah, the fire of the Torah, which is what God commanded the Jewish people from Sinai. It has
Yes.
been we are the guardians of that Torah, and as
Yeah.
I've heard, I'm on a roll tonight. As I've heard my Christian friends say, we love the Jews because if it wouldn't have been the Jews, there would have been no Judaism
That's
in
right.
the Second Temple period, and if there
That's
wouldn't have been
right.
any Judaism, there wouldn't have been any Jews, and if there wouldn't have
That's
any
right.
Jews, there would have been a certain very important Jew of the Second Temple period. His name was Jesus.
Right.
And so we have to be grateful for the Jews for holding on to the Torah, for holding on
Yes.
to their lives. And so that
Yes. Yes.
we have the Jewish people, and one of the most famous, arguably, it's really not an argument, the most famous Jew of all times was Jesus.
Yes.
More Jews,
Right.
more people today have heard of Jesus than have heard of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
That's
But
right.
but
So,
knowledgeable Christians like yourselves who read the Bible realize that without the books of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and Moses, there would be no books of Jesus.
Well, I have to say to you, first, two things. Number one, thank you for doing what you said the Jews have been doing since Mount Sinai, which is responsible for the oracles of God and giving them to the world. And secondly, you're so right. There is a little cliche that says Jews do not need Christians, but Christians need Jews. And that's kind of a tongue in cheek, and there's more to that, but it's true. The essence of it is that Judaism is where our faith comes from. Jesus didn't come to start a new religion. And so, he was a practicing Jew. And so we certainly, I certainly see my role to you and other Jews as a learner. I'm here to learn from you, and I'm grateful for what you do and what you bring to the world. So thank you. You make me a better person. Those commandments are universal. So thank you.
Don't be afraid to say it. I make you a better Christian by by sharing the roots of Christianity. Then you can get to know Jesus better. The real cliche is Jesus wasn't a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegian.
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned this.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that I want to go to the audience. I'll wrap up here and say, it's funny you say that studying the roots of Christianity makes me know Jesus better. But you know what? Honestly, I can sit here and say on public record, because this is being recorded. Yes, it has made me see Jesus better, but more than that, it has made me see God, the Father. Like I've never seen him before. It's made me understand God, Hashem, more than Jesus. I mean, I don't know how to explain it other than that. So let's end that there and let's go on. We're running out of time, so I want to give people time to ask questions. So have your questions ready, because I'm ready for you. So if you have one, please unmute yourself and let's see what we can talk about next. Ari, hey Ari, go ahead, buddy.
Shalom from California. Yeah, so a lot of us here are watching the politics and whatnot that are coming from Israel, and we're seeing a lot of the the things going on with the liberal movement and the conservative movement. And so the question is do you see that Israel, the Jewish people, becoming more Torah observant, or is there some kind of or are they going less?
Okay, you started your question. You mentioned, I think, politics, but then you ended up with a very simple and great question, and that is, how do I see Israel? Is it getting more Torah observant or less Torah observant?
Right.
And I'll answer that question. The answer is unquestionably. There is no doubt in my mind that Israel is becoming more and more conservative for various reasons. But I'm a man of faith, and I am very, very sure that this is coming because of what God wants. I can give all sorts of realpolitik reasons why this is happening, but we don't have a lot of time, so I'll go to the bottom line, and that is God is bringing his people back to the land of Israel as a main part of the redemptive process. When I say the redemptive process, I mean that Jews call the Messianic area the era of redemption, Geula, redemption. That means that we were, in 2,000 years, a miraculous exile. Normally, nobody lasts for 2,000 years in an exile. You're in exile maybe for 1-2 generations tops. And then you assimilate, and then you're done. You disappear. That's why we never heard of we don't know the Romans anymore. We don't know the Assyrians anymore. We don't know anybody anymore. All the old people are old, and now we just have the new countries. But Israel managed to stay throughout all of those hundreds of years, thousands of years in exile, and God promised us that we would come back to the land of Israel, and here we are coming back to the land of Israel. So if anybody gets a chance, even though it's again, it's a little bit weird that the Jewish people became majority. Certainly, the Zionists who founded the state of Israel, a majority of them were not religious. Again, I don't have time to go into that. I have a very interesting way of explaining that. But even though a majority of them were not religious, you only have to scratch the surface. You don't even need your fingernails. It's enough that you brush it off a little bit with your fingertips to see that God bringing the people back, the Jewish people back to the land of Israel, is a fulfillment of prophecy in the books of Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and many, many others. And if the God promised us that he would bring us back to the land of Israel, and he did, then that means that God exists and that God loves us and does this great miracle for us. And that is one of the reasons that I became more religious, because I learned that in Bnei Akiva. I said, wow, if God is doing that, something pretty cool. And then once we're already living here for the past 70 or more years, with all of God's divine protection, then it's also pretty easy to become more and more religious. And of course, there are no atheists in foxholes. So if we're managing to live in this very dangerous neighborhood with over 300 million Arabs, I could say this up until a few years ago. Now more and more Arab states and Muslim states are saying, hey, no, we want to be friends with you Jews. We're really coming to the last moments. Really, we're almost there to the end of the redemptive era. We call it Reshit Tzmichat Gulatenu. Israel is the beginning of the sprouting of our redemption. But I think that we're getting so close to the end of that redemption times. And again, I think that evangelical Christians, from a slightly different perspective, I said before, you mentioned the elephant in the room, but another story about the elephant is the blind men and the elephant. If you've heard of that story, if 6 blind men come to an elephant that they've never seen, what is an elephant? Well, one of them holds on to the sides of the elephant. They say, well, an elephant is like a wall. Another holds on to the tail. An elephant is like a rope. Another holds on to the tusk. Oh, an elephant is like a trumpet. Another holds on to the trunk. Oh, an elephant is like a tree trunk, something like that. All of these things are different aspects of the elephant in that story. But what is redemption for the Christians? The redemption is Jesus coming back and reigning from Jerusalem for 1,000 years. For the Jewish perspective, redemption is the Jewish people coming back to the land of Israel and reestablishing their relationship with God, coming back to God, and the entire world coming to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Well, and of course, there will be a king Messiah. So the identity of the Messiah is something that we might disagree upon. Well, when he actually comes, we'll ask him, is this your first time here or second? Then we'll all know who is the Messiah.
Thank you.
But that is why the Jewish people are one of the reasons why the Jewish people are becoming more and more religious, because God is holding us in his hand from the morning until the night.
Thank you.
And
wow.
ta-da.
The great long answer. Thank you. Okay, we have time for probably 2 more questions, unless we can go a few minutes over. So Sandra, you have a question. You're muted, my friend. Unmute yourself. Wait, let's do a quick sound check. You're still muted.
Okay, does somebody else have a question?
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you are. Okay, Sandra, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for sharing this. But my question is, how can we pray for you, your family, but mostly for Jerusalem, Israel? It seems like the United States is in these troubled waters, and it just seems like it's all around the world. Yeah, I watch I-23, but I don't know if I get all the news.
Okay, I-24. You got to change the channel to I-24, I-23. That's anyway. Yeah. So yes. we are in tremendous times, tremendously amazing times. On the one hand, we have the state of Israel that was developed from the desert that I'm still living near. I'm living near the Judean desert. But 70 or 100 years ago, Tel Aviv was a desert, even more of a desert than I'm living in today. And today, Tel Aviv is one of the most advanced Western countries in the world. And another infinite amount of amazing miracles that we have in the state of Israel. Yet, at any given moment, we have an atomic bomb aimed at us from Iran. We have terrorists that are only too happy to grab a knife or a gun or a car or I don't know what, and to kill as many Jews as they can. So we at the same time, we are really like in the mouth of the lion, but we are hugged by God.
Yeah.
And so if you want to, but really the whole world is in this crazy time. Things are getting better and better and better and better, but they seem to be getting worse and worse. It's sort of like we're in the best car that you can imagine, but it looks like it's traveling towards a cliff, and we might fall off that cliff. But if at the last minute, like in a movie that just metach, just so much stress, God will save us at the last minute. We all believe that.
Okay.
And so what we have to pray for, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for bringing us to this moment. We trust you, God. We praise you that you can deliver us from here. And so we simply ask you, God, to do what you know is right, what you have in your plan, and that is to deliver Israel, to deliver Jerusalem, and to not only let us survive, but to thrive. And not only Israel and the Jews in the land of Israel, but the Jews and the people who love the Jews all over the world. For that is the side that we must take in these last days. Who is going to be saved by God? Well, most Christians think, well, if I believe in Jesus, then I'm saved. But you know that it says in the Bible that all of Israel will be saved, and all of Israel, all of the people who align themselves with Israel will be saved. So you must pray for yourself, Sandra, and for your Christian friends to keep on praying for Jerusalem, to keep on being a lover of Jerusalem, being a friend of Jerusalem and a friend of Israel and a friend of the Jews. For that, I will guarantee you that you will be saved.
Wow. That is an incredible response. Yes, I mean, that deserves applause. Absolutely. I've never heard anybody answer that question like that, Gidon.
Neither have I. It just came from me now. I never thought of it before like that.
Wow. That is so profound. Thank you, God. That's wonderful. Okay, we got to move fast. So does anybody else have a question before I have one more question for Gidon? If you have a question, friends, go ahead and unmute yourself, wave at me, give me some kind of signal that you need to ask a question. Okay, I don't see anybody. Okay.
Take it away, Lori.
I'm looking. Okay. So the last question I have for you right now is this 2 days ago ended the Muslim holiday of Ramadan.
No,
and
it's ending in 2 days. 2 days ago started the Leil al-Qadr, which is a holiday, which is a minor holiday, 3 or 4 days before the end of the month of Ramadan.
Okay, clearly I have studying to do on the holiday of Ramadan, but to really know it. But it seems like at the beginning, it's a month-long holiday, I believe. Is that right for the Muslims? Right. Okay.
Yes.
So at the beginning, I think it was at the beginning of Ramadan that you and some other Orthodox Jews joined some Muslims in Israel to celebrate the beginning of their holiday, which speaks volumes to your heart to love God and love people and to build friendships. Can you tell us about that dinner? Do you have a picture that you can share with us of that group? There was a group photo that came across my path. I don't have access to it right now, but do you have that picture? And can you tell us about that?
I'll try to get just 1 second.
Okay. You guys have got to give us 5 more minutes. You've got to see this picture and hear the story behind this to show proof of the Jewish people's heart and energy and effort to live peaceful in the land and to be friends to all people.
Okay, so here we go. I will share my screen and I will show you. This is, here's me. I'm wearing a different shirt, but you might be able to recognize me. Sitting next to my friend Ashraf Jabri, and sitting next to my other friend who you probably are going to have on as one of your friends. This is Yishai Fleischer. He is today the spokesman of the Jewish community of Hebron. And this is Avi Zimmerman. He, together with Ashraf, are the founders of the Judea and Samaria Chamber of Commerce. And basically what they're trying to do is make peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Not only that, between Israeli settlers who live in Judea and Samaria and Palestinians who live in Judea and Samaria, in order for there to be peace based on shared commerce, because that's what everybody wants to do. So I went there. I was invited by my friend Ashraf to his home. This is a picture on his balcony. Out there is the city of Hebron. Right over here, he's overlooking the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the cave of the patriarchs. This is inside the cave of the patriarchs.
On the first day of Ramadan.
It was not the first day of Ramadan. It was after a few days of Ramadan. What Ramadan is a month-long fast that observant Muslims fast from sunrise to sunset every day for an entire month. But at the end of every day, they have a feast, and they invite their friends over in order to feast together. It really is a very beautiful idea, and so it has become more and more of a thing that Muslims who have Jewish friends invite their Jewish friends over. Now, this has been in the past mostly far left Jews with far left Arabs, and they wouldn't dream of inviting a settler. But this is what the vision of the future is happening, because I and my friend Ashraf and numerous other Muslims and Jews and Christians get together and say, we have our differences, but we have things in common. Let's just be among friends. And that is what you guys are doing also. So the fact that I love being amongst my Christian friends, I love being amongst my Muslim friends also. Now, I have a red line. I'm only willing to be friends with somebody who I'm pretty sure is not going to murder me. So that's quite a red line. But there are people like that, and I love to find these friends, and I love to be friends with them. That's the way it goes.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Can you undo the screen share real quick? Okay, thank you. All right, wonderful. Well, we are at the end of our hour. We've actually gone over a little bit, so forgive us for going a little long. Definitely, Gidon was, as Christians say, anointed tonight. And so we are so grateful to have heard everything that you had to share with us. We thank you from the bottom of our heart for sharing your heart and the wisdom from Judaism with us. We are grateful.
I just have to say that I didn't share anywhere near everything that I have on my heart.
Oh, I'm sure of it. We probably should do a round 2 when we have time. So, guys, thank you all for joining us. I know it's Mother's Day weekend. We all need to get to our moms and spend time with our families. Thank you again for joining us on this episode of Just Among Friends. It truly felt like a family reunion today, in my opinion. So thank you, Gidon. We love you.
Thank you very much. I love you all also, and I'm looking forward to having you all back again in my home in Hebron.
Yes, please. Yes, we can't wait. We can't wait. Okay, everybody, have a great week, and we'll see y'all next week. Same time, same place. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.